Behind the Roar, the official podcast of West Tigers.
Hello and welcome to episode 60 of Behind the Roar, the official podcast of West Tigers. This week we're privileged to have a chat with our CEO, Shane Richardson, to talk about a few key issues around the club that our members and supporters are keen to learn more about. Behind the Roar is proudly sponsored by Pro Wrestling Australia. We are preparing, of course, this weekend. It is Women in League Round, hence me wearing this jersey. And I just thought it'd be a good opportunity to chat to Richo. There has been quite a bit of news throughout the week. We will be also talking about our home ground policy for next year, a few things that have been done with membership, and also our home games, the match day experience in 2025. Richo, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks very much. Just a point to all of our members out there that the jersey looks a lot better on women than it does on Chris. So don't let that detract from you buying it.
Thanks very much. I will tell you, I did have a little bit to do with the design.
I know, the W.
The W for Warren.
Yeah.
No, it's actually women. Yeah, you're with it.
Wonderful.
Mate, look, I know that the results, NRL team results, haven't gone as we all would have hoped for this year, and our NRLW team has just kicked off a loss at the weekend. I guess what we need, I want to chat to you a bit about, in terms of wins and losses, there's still a lot going on around the club that probably our members and fans need to know about, and regardless of where you are on the ladder, you'd probably agree that communication is a really big part of a successful club.
Yeah, look, no one wants to be where we are at the moment on the ladder, and certainly not Benji, and certainly not myself and the club. I get a question all the time, Richo, when's it going to turn around? Richo, when are we going to win? Richo, when are we? Look, I could give many succinct replies, but, you know, we do have a plan in place moving forward. We are confident in the plan. We've had a lot of injuries this year in key positions, and you know, there's games that we could have won that we've lost. But having said that, we'll be trying to win every one of the last games of this right to the end of the season. But we are actually always have been since round 7 preparing for what our roster looks like, what our football department looks like, and what we look like as a team for next year. And that we're working towards making the top 8 next year. That's our target, and we'll be making sure that we do everything we can to achieve that goal.
One of the key things that we'll have a chat about in this brief episode of Behind the Roar is the player roster and how the good clubs mould their player roster. There's no secret, or it is, I guess, a science, but you can elaborate a little bit more.
Well, look, I think you've got to have 17 players to win a grand final, and you know you've got to have 30, and back up. But if you haven't got 17 that are capable of winning a grand final, you're going to struggle. We're not in that position at the moment. I think we've probably got 9 at the moment. We need to develop 4 or 5 more of our own, which is we've been doing this year with our juniors. I'd like to think that we could have 8 juniors in a grand final of our young juniors. Our juniors are coming through. So if you've got 8 juniors in the grand final, then you have 5 hard workers that do the job. We've got a few of those, but we need more that do the job in the middle of the thing. Then you have your elite 3 or 4, and we've got those. I mean, in Luai, Coruscant, Galvin, we've got some really quality players who can take us the distance. But we need to add to it, and we know what we need to add to it. We've got a $2 million war chest. People asked, well, why do we let John Bateman go? Well, we felt that letting Bateman go overseas was an opportunity for John, but more importantly, an opportunity for us to pick up more money in our salary cap. I'm putting together a war chest in our salary cap, accumulating money. We probably, now that Stefano's decided to leave, and I'm sorry to see Stefano go, but, mate, every person at this club has got to want to be in for the crocodile role. We're in a crocodile role for our life, and you know, we want people here that want to be part of that crocodile role, and we'll make sure that every person that here is part of that crocodile role. And so we would have $2 million war chest there at the moment. It's a lot of money. We need 2 or 3 players up front. Obviously, need another middle. I know what else we need. I'm not going to say it because we're pretty close to fixing that. But having said that, we have a plan going forward. We've got some great young kids that we've brought through, and Benji's had to, tirelessly put, work with them. Some people make comments about him favouring the juniors. I don't think he's favoured the juniors at all. He's thrown them out in the marketplace, thrown them at the wall against the NRL clubs, and they've come up trumps, most of them. And our second grade side's got better and better. We're putting a lot of depth into our second grade side for next year outside the top 36 to give us some experienced players that can also tap on the door for first grade, because I honestly believe your second grade side's got to be competitive to put pressure on your first grade side. But we inherited the roster this year, and we're doing everything. It's not just a matter of waging a magical wand. There's contracts in place, and you've got to gradually, weed out what you don't require and replace it with what you do require. 3 years ago, Bulldogs struggled, got rid of players. It takes a while to rearrange your roster. They're more than competitive at the moment, and we'll be the same in a couple of years' time.
All right, we'll talk a bit more about that. And Stefano, I want to chat about that.
Before
we do, just go through some of the results from the weekend and also what's coming up. Our match in Auckland against the Warriors, 28-16. Look, it was closer than the scoreline suggests. I can assure you of that. We were down, I think it was 14-0 at half time. We fought back 14-10. Back end of the match, though, I think we had no players left on the bench.
Then we don't find a touch from a penalty.
Doesn't help.
It doesn't when you're leading down 14-10. The same as the week before when we got back into the game the week before and hit the front, and we come up with 2 errors on the first tackle to give the ball back to them and go down to 12 men. So we shoot ourselves in the foot.
We do. It hasn't been pointed out, but I reckon I'm pretty confident in saying, and I'm asking David Middleton, the head honcho of figures, to back me up. I reckon it was the youngest ever team in 25 years of the club that ran out there. Pretty sure it would have been. I mean, that's no excuse, but what I'm saying is,
no, it's not an excuse. We're not making it as an excuse. What we're saying is it's what we said at the start of the year. We said we had all these young kids. We had the blood, and we've done that, and we've lived through the pain of it on top of the injuries to the senior players. But, you can't get game without pain. And if you don't try things that are different, you'll never make any difference whatsoever. So, and Benji said to wear that this year, and I'm sure he's improved as a coach, and I'm more than happy with the way he's gone, and we'll strengthen the structure and players around him for next year. But, I'm more than happy with what Benji's doing.
Few injuries, as I say. Luke Laulili, he'll be out with a HIA, so not available for Thursday's match against the Cowboys. Starts Hoa. Do you feel for him? He came back from a syndesmosis, and then he did the hamstring for a long stint. Now he's done the other hammy.
Yes, but again, though, we made decisions last year, with all due respect, that were for the player, not for the club. And we can't allow players to go on international duty when they're not fit to play or need operations. We did that last year with a couple of players and suffered the consequence of it. I can assure the members we will not be doing that this year. We'll be holding a hard line that players who play in the internationals at the end of the year are fit, 100% fit to play. Otherwise, they won't be playing.
All right, well, there you have it. That's a scoop on Behind the Raw. So that'll be for this.
It's not a scoop. It's something that clubs should. Any worthwhile club will do exactly the same thing. The priority.
It's that club v country debate too, isn't it?
Well, it's not a debate, because if you're not fit and you need operations to play for your club, and we're paying $700,000 a year, or $500,000, or even $300,000 a year. All we're saying, we'll never stop a player playing for his country, but we will stop a player playing for his country if he's not fit to play. And if he requires surgery that gets him back in time for us to start next season in a position where we can actually compete at the top level. So I make no bones about that and no apologies for it. It's not the country versus club at all. I want players to play for their country. I think it's wonderful and marvellous. But players will play for their countries if they're 100% fit and don't require operations.
Yeah. Oh, well, you're paying their wages, aren't they? It's like
we are
you're
paying their
maintaining
wages.
the car right
Well,
throughout
we're
the
not.
year.
We are paying their wages.
Yeah. A great result in Auckland for our New South Wales Cup team. They beat third place Warriors 20 points to 14. It was 14 all with about 5 minutes to go, and a 50-metre try by a young front rower. He beat about 4 defenders, carried a few over the line with him as well, and they end up getting that win. So they play the Roosters. That's 2 p.m. this weekend. The Magpies. That's at Lidcombe Oval. Flegger also against the Roosters. Doubleheader at Lidcombe Oval this weekend. If you can get there, that match is at 12 p.m. Disappointing result for our NRLW team on Sunday at Campbelltown Sports Stadium.
It was like watching a rewind of the NRL game. We just made so many errors and so many silly mistakes in the first half. Put ourselves behind the 8 ball before we actually woke up that we could actually compete. So it was disappointing.
28-0 after I think
Correct.
24 minutes. They did win the second half, the girls, but disappointing. Anyway, they'll get up and go again, playing the Titans on Saturday afternoon at Seabus Super Stadium. A Harvey Norman women's team, the New South Wales Premiership team, 16 all draw with Mounties. That's a really good
It
result.
was a great result.
Mounties are, I think, up there
Yeah, they are.
towards the top of the ladder. And this Sunday, that team, they're here at the Zurich Centre at Concord on Sunday, 2 p.m. against the Bulldogs. So I encourage members, fans, if you can get out here, come along and support the ladies. Talking of the ladies, Richo, women in league round, the NRL, the game has done a really good job for many, many years. And you'd know yourself, having been around, longer than the game itself, almost.
Harsh but
the
fair.
role,
Harsh but very fair.
the role that women have played, even when we were kids, they were.
Well, they still are. I mean, they're the heart and soul of junior rugby league.
Yep.
Female coaches, managers, running tuck shops, doing the things that they need to do. They've been amazing for so long. I do think, though, the celebration of women in league, now that we have NRLW, I think this, in my opinion, should be closer to last year, because we should celebrate women in league every day because of what they do and their support and what we do as supporters of the game. So I think that the more we push the women in league through the NRLW and our support of that, I think that's a very, very important thing going forward.
I've never asked you this, right? But and as I say, you've been around the game for so long. The strength of the women's game in recent years, it's going on a rapidly upward trajectory, and commercially, I'm talking. Would you agree it's added a whole new layer and whole new dimension commercially for the game to sell?
Yeah, it has. And, a lot of the selling of sponsorship for the women's game is easier than the male's game because of the lack of timing with, behaviour off the field, et cetera, et cetera. And there's a lot more sponsors now involved who would never be involved with the male's game but want to be involved with the women's game, and that's been fantastic. West MacArthur, for example, have poured a lot of money into our supporting our women's team, and I think that it's a growing part of our business, and I think the NRL, and obviously being on television and everything else, it's going to get big. I can't believe the explosion. The game 5 years ago to what the game is today is just a completely different game.
I was going to ask you, are you surprised at the rapid growth that it's
massively,
and particularly Origin as well?
Massively. I mean, defensively, there was big hits early on, but the skill level. But now we've got so many quality, skilled athletes. I mean, if you have a look at our athletes in our NRLW side, they're great athletes. They're not just great rugby league players, and a lot of these come from different ports, whether it be rugby sevens, basketball, you name what it is. And so I think it's well ahead of the AFL game as far as for spectators, and it's going to get better and better and better. I'm really completely ecstatic about what's happening in the women's game.
And Origin's just off the scale. I think I read a figure. There was an international, the Wallabies played Wales, and I think it had an average viewing audience of about 550,000. Up against the women's Origin was, I think, 1.1 million.
Correct, and it was. And it just shows you that people are willing to watch it. We had a reasonable crowd in the weekend, 1,300 or 1,400 or 1,500 at Campbelltown, and that's grown from 300s a few years ago, and it'll grow into some of the bigger games this year, 3,000 and 4,000 and 5,000. So I've got nothing but support for what we're doing, and we've got a wonderful pathways here. We're not just bringing in players from everywhere else to play for us. We've got a wonderful pathway coming through, which Brett Kamali and the women's team have done a great job of doing with Matt Betsy. So I'm really, really thrilled about what we're doing in women's football.
Tables, ladders, chairs. PWA Black Label takes over the Factory Theatre Marrickville on Friday, 2nd of August, featuring a 6-wrestler table ladders chairs match. Get your tickets now on prowrestlingaustralia.com.au.
All right, well, if we go back and talk more about player roster and the management, if we can, mate, and it is a bit of a science, and I said, like, the good clubs that are having success year in, year out, that are always competing for the silverware. The likes of Melbourne Storm, the likes of the Roosters, throw Penrith in there as well. I guess when you assemble that top 30 roster, every decision is really critical, and it's critical you get the right decision. Sometimes you're going to make mistakes. But is it about, and I know it's very commercial, but is it about getting the best possible return on investment you can from every player you put into that top 30?
Yeah, it is. But I mean, you're talking about two different sides in Melbourne and Penrith. Melbourne, with all due respect, are a recruitment side, and they recruit really well. Penrith has a junior, very similar to ours, with a junior base. They've got the bases of their teams being built around their young juniors and developing from there, which is what we have to do. I think from our point of view in Penrith, it's very important that the players you bring into the squad are really good players, that you're not whether they be the middle of the road guys that are doing a hard working job, or whether or not you need to buy a really good player into the roster. But to do that, you need to accumulate your cap and not race out and buy the first thing you see. It's not every child player wins a prize. You've got to take that money, be sensible of it, and make sure you add to it. We don't need 10 players to make us a better side. We need to develop our juniors, and we need, now Stefano's left, we need probably 3 players to add to it. And we've got $2 million to do it, so we'll get quality players.
What happens in the case where you arrive at a club, or any chief executive arrives at a new club, and together collectively with the football recruitment or department, you realise that you may be you've paid over the odds for a player?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. So I arrive at a club in January, and no matter what everybody says, that the roster was set for Benji and myself at the start of the year. I didn't know how good or bad the roster was. I didn't really know how good or bad the juniors were. They're coming through. I heard all about it. So you've got to sit there, and it's like when you come into a club. I don't come in and sack everybody and bring all these. What you do is you refine the departments, make them. Well, I said at the beginning we had to stop the bleeding. We were bleeding sponsors and people, and we did that. We got sponsors back. We got full all over our jerseys and sleeves and everything else. All we lack is a major for next year, which we'll get. But we had to stop that bleeding, and then I had to have a close look with our staff at just how good our kids were and just how good our squad was. So you can't formulate that by what people just say to you. So we had to take 7 or 8 rounds to get into, what they were like. At the 7 round mark, I felt I knew what we had in our kids, and I felt I knew what we had in our roster and the changes we had to make. So from that day forward with Benji, we moved forward and told the players concerned that they're not part of our plans going forward, sat down with their management and the players to talk to them about that. So we'd done it up front with them, no behind the scenes stuff or otherwise. I went to England to find out what was in the marketplace, what we could do, what we couldn't do. And we had a plan going forward with the roster, but you can't just take the roster and tear it apart because they've got contracts.
Yep.
What you've got to do is be upfront and tell them what your plans are and that they're not part of it, and work your way back from there. And that's what we're doing. And you'll find changes over the next six to 8 weeks in the roster that we've done in a logical presentation fashion. We'll release up numbers for our top 30 because at the moment we haven't got the numbers in the top 30 to do a lot of things, but we will. And from that point onwards, we'll be in a strong position to make plays for players that'll make a difference. And at the same time, you've got to remember these young kids were 19-year-olds. Some weren't even 19-year-old. Well, most of them weren't 19-year-old at the start of the year. We even had a 17-year-old in there who's playing.
Yeah.
So they came into pre-season with no idea. It was like kids in a lolly shop. Well, how long has this been going on for? Now they know. And also, we know how hard we need to be with them and how tough we need to make them. Benji had to mould them into this year, take them, not treat them softly at all, but it's a big thing to come into the NRL. And I think he's done a great job of that. But now they've got an understanding what it takes to win games in the NRL, and they've got to improve off the mark. Secondly, the rest of the squad that are there, they've got to take a leadership role to become absolutely committed. We need to be the fittest and strongest. We need to cross every T, dot every I, absolutely leave no stone unturned, because we're going into pre-season with a squad that we want to get ready to try and make the top 8 next year.
The word you say there is honesty, and it's good that you have that conversation with players who might be on a contract for a couple of years. Jake Simpkin was a player that has moved on. Asu Kapoa, another one, and Johnny Bateman on loan to Warrington. And Ice as well, yeah. For next year. So talk us through the Bateman decision. It may have come a bit left field for our members and fans.
But no matter what anybody said, I never shopped Bateman in England. People asked me about him in England, no question, but I never shopped him and told them there wasn't going to be there. Obviously, when I was over there, met with Sam Benjis. I knew Sam was looking for somebody for next year, but not Bateman wasn't a part of the discussions, but I knew they were looking for a back rower. So I left that be. One thing I think people have got to understand with Benji's willing to make the tough calls and speak to the. Doesn't matter whether you're the best player or the highest paid player or the lowest paid player. Benji will have the same conversation. I don't think at all that he treats the players, young players, differently. I think he treats them differently in the sense that they're young players, and you've got to keep their momentum going and keep their confidence up, especially when you're losing games like we are. But it's up to our senior players to step up and do the job. Now, I know that Benji's had challenged our senior players about performances, and I absolutely applaud him for it. I've met a lot of coaches in my time who talk tough, did nothing. Benji doesn't talk tough, he does. And so he's had tough conversations with a lot of people. Now, that's not why John Bateman's gone to England. We had a phone call on the Monday night from Sam Benjis, rang me, doing the right thing, direct. Obviously, he'd already spoke to John.
Yeah.
And it was in our interest to let John go for varying reasons, which I won't go into now. But the bottom line was, it's just another part of our war chest going forward. And John can go over there, think about what he's doing, make sure he wants to make a commitment. He's got another 2 years of contract to make a commitment to come back, because anybody who's here has to want to be in the crocodile role. We're in the crocodile. We want people who are here to fight to the freaking death with the rest of us. And if they're not going to do that, well, they're not. I'm not saying John doesn't want to do that. I'm saying that he's got to make calls about what he wants to do with his future, but he's certainly got a future with us if he wants to get into that crocodile role.
I saw reports there was a blow-up between Benji and Bateman. Well, that wasn't a blow-up. It was a robust discussion.
Yeah, well, Benji's challenged a lot of players. They don't talk about. I mean, they've made this into a bigger thing because he left that the next day, did not left the next day, but it didn't have it. That night was when we first talked about thing. But Benji didn't just have a robust conversation with John Bateman. Benji had a robust conversation with all the senior players.
There you go.
So that's a fact. And as I said, if Benji wasn't doing things like that, then I'd be worried about Benji. I'd be really having a close look at Benji. Because he does that, because he tries to bring these young kids through, it's not about being patient. He'll just get better and better at the coaching job. My job is to give him every tool possible to make that happen for next year.
The club or even the media department copped a bit of stick because the decision announcement about Bateman was put out while the guys were playing in Auckland. But I think members probably need to understand that the reason that was done, he'd only just signed the contract about 40 minutes prior to kickoff.
But the press might release that he's going, but that doesn't mean he's going, because there's a whole lot of things in contracts, like his insurance, medical cover, the way it's done with the NRL, release from the NRL. It took over 2 and a bit days to do that. Now, on Friday afternoon, we finally got everything signed off on the contracts and everything else. Late Friday afternoon. Now, what was going to happen was Warrington were going to announce it in England, which I understand why. Well, we had to announce it here. So it was unfortunate that it was a night of thing, but if we didn't get it out to our members, and we've made a commitment to our members that you'll be told first. Now, if we hadn't gone out to you first, which we did, and then put the media release out after that, so members knew before anybody in Warrington knew, any media knew, anybody knew whatsoever. And we had announced it before that because we hadn't done the deal.
Exactly.
So please believe me when I say to you again and again and again, the first people we'll tell about signings, releases, whatever's going on is you, the members, and that's why you need to be a member.
There you go. I believe you. I believe you.
Well, you're an Auckland.
I hit send.
Well, yeah, but you're over there. I mean, you're over there yourself going, what's going on here? And poor old Benji's caught in the floodlights at the headlight. He knew what was going on, but he didn't know it was finalised.
Well, we were going to tell him just before his kickoff.
Before his kickoff, it's exactly right, and he had to worry about the game itself.
Exactly.
Now, some media manager probably should have told him as soon as he got out of the thing, but
I think he did.
Did you? Oh, okay. But the end of the day, look, it wasn't planned to be that way. But if we hadn't done it that way, we would never have been able to let the members know before anybody else did, and that's our commitment to you, the members.
Tables, ladders, chairs. PWA Black Label takes over the Factory Theatre Marrickville on Friday, 2nd of August, featuring a 6-wrestler table ladders chairs match. Get your tickets now on prowrestlingaustralia.com.au.
Okay, Stefano. Now you've said the club wanted to keep Stefano.
Yep.
So disappointing he's got, but life goes on.
It is. He sort of was going, and then he sort of was going to stay, and then he was going, and that's why we gave him the time to go out there and get it finished. I just wanted to get it off the books one way or the other. We made a more than a reasonable offer. I think probably too much of an offer in a lot of ways, but at the end of the day, we did want him to stay, but I was resigned that he was going to leave because you always do when it takes this long. And so we've had plans in the background. taking our time to spend the money. And as I said, we've got over $2 million now in kitty, so we'll be very dangerous in the marketplace.
Okay.
But having said that, I wish the best to Stefano. We don't want to lose blood, but Stefano wanted to go on to try and win a premiership next year, and he'll go to a club that he thinks can do it that way. We weren't that club, so I wish him and his family the best.
We could be that club, though.
Well, he could be. Well, second year at Penrith, but we'll wait and see. I'd rather just, stop it. No, mate, I'm excited about where we are now, and just let everybody know too, we are not slackening off one bit to win every game to the end of the season. We've got a few injuries this week again, but we'll be out on Thursday night putting 100% effort in, and we need you to come along and cheer us on, because at the end of the day, I know it's been tough for everybody, and I get it all the time, but at the end of the day, I know we'll turn it round, and I know that we will be more than competitive next season.
And it all does start on Thursday against the Cowboys. Just something's coming to my head just there. Now, it's the 1st of August on Thursday, isn't it?
Yes.
That's the horse's birthday, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
We're playing the Cowboys.
Yes, we are.
Okay. Anyway, look, talking about...
Only you could come up with that irrelevance. Only the son of a punter and a racehorse caller could come up with that one.
Let's talk about Leichhardt and the home grounds, Richo, if we can, briefly. So recently we put out to members first the strategy going forward for home grounds next year, the year after, and also 2027. So this year, obviously, we're playing 5 and 5 at Leichhardt Oval and Campbelltown Sports Stadium. We will be playing Magic Round for the next 3 years going forward. The decision then has been made. So Combank Stadium will host 4 games next year, 26 and 27. Campbelltown will have 4 games next year, 2026, with a watch on 2027. Because there are works taking place at Leichhardt Oval and at Campbelltown Sports Stadium, we know a fair bit of money's been pumped in by the government to Leichhardt, which is great. But we don't quite know what that's going to look like, right?
Yeah, look, let's go back a step.
Yep.
So let's look at Leichhardt Oval. So there's no way in the world, despite everybody running around patting themselves on the back, that if West Tigers hadn't stood up and said, we're not going to play there unless you come up with the money, that we would have got the money.
Doesn't happen.
The mayor said it. So let's be truthful about that. So we've prompted that. So when they came up with the money is in stages. Next year, all I'll be doing is spending $1 million on doing all the preparations and everything. So there'll be nothing done next year. The start of any building will happen the year after. How long that takes to spend the $40 million and where they spend the $40 million will be crucial to how many games you play in the future. So we've done a deal for 2 years, and the deal was, and to be fair to the NRL, they've given us, which is unusual, the last trial for the next 3 years at Leichhardt Oval, which means we'll play the last trial. I think we'll be playing the Bulldogs there in the last trial next year. It hasn't been confirmed yet, but I think that's what you get a bit of an exclusive there. But we have to confirm that. So that'll be every year there, and that we'll be getting our members heavily involved with what happens on that day. Then we've got 3 fixture matches there. We don't know who the fixtures are yet because we haven't got the draw. So we that's based on when do they actually finish those the development, and then how much that disrupts the season.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to happen in 2026 or 27? So at the end of the 2 years, we'll reevaluate if they spend the money at Leichhardt Oval, who knows what we're going to, and how they spend the money. That they spend it on rejuvenating the ground, that northern stand with new seating and what's the name, dressing rooms, toilets, facilities for our members. I'm sitting on the panel that's working on that, but at the end of the day, they've got to show us what they're going to do. At the moment, they've got the $40 million. Yeah. They haven't shown us how they're going to spend it. So let's be clear about that, and we want to make sure that we get the best deal possible for our members there. Campbelltown's in a different situation. They've actually got the money already, and they're going to be starting work. What that work means is that the ground will lose capacity over the next 18 months as they build the things that are required, which is again a standard at the northern end, with a similar sort of thing to Leichhardt, upgraded seating, etc. around it, and we'll have a boutique stadium then of 18,000 with about 1,200 to 1,300 corporates. Yeah, it'll be an ideal, but they've got the money, and we're only umming and ahhing there simply because we don't know what sort of numbers we're going to lose while the rebuild goes on. So that's 2 years. Who knows after 2 years where Leichhardt is? I think Campbelltown will be close to being finished, but we're not sure. and building, you know what it's like. Nothing's ever on time with building in this world today. So we've made a decision for the betterment of the club to put that in place to review it after 2 years, okay? And then on the other side, we've had a great relationship with City Stadiums. We've got a great ground to be able to sell for our sponsors and corporates and big games, home and away against Parramatta and things like that. It's not Parramatta Stadium. It's Penrith's, ours, and Parramatta's for the next 2 years. That at the end of that period, we'll have a look at where we are and move forward on from there. So we've got the best of both worlds. Our corporates are going to get some great opportunities at a great stadium. We've got the Balmain faithful still getting opportunities to play at Balmain. We're going to have 5-game packages. We've got a completely new membership approach to what we're doing, a completely new membership package to give to our members, which will give them great choice, et cetera, to grow our membership to what we want to do, to get around that 13,000 mark. Yeah. So these things have all been put in place, the planning for the stadiums, the planning and in discussions with the councils, both Inner West and also at Campbelltown, and also with these city stadiums. So it's a logical presentation of where we want to be and a logical presentation of what we want to be with the team we're going to have for next year.
I hope I didn't say 4 games at Leichhardt. So 3 at Leichhardt plus that second trial match.
No, you said 3. That's
did,
3 plus. But the second trial, everybody knows that's when you play your best team.
Well, that's the pre-season challenge, isn't it?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, we used to play the Charity Shield at South in that game.
Yeah. Just back on Parramatta Stadium or Combank, there are probably some concerns that it's Parramatta's home ground, which you've pointed out. You've got some plans in place to make it a jungle.
Yes, we have.
And not just Parramatta, but all 3 venues. There's a bit of a reinvigorated match day experience members and fans can look forward to.
It'll be a totally different experience when you come to these grounds next year. We were locked in for what we needed to do this year. We couldn't, like the football team, but we're not locked in anymore. We've been planning in the background about membership, about a game day experience, about what we present to the fans, everything else, and the stadium at the Combank Stadium will give us an opportunity to put a lot of those plans in place, hopefully night games with a lot of fireworks and presentations, but more importantly, a real feeling that it's our home ground for those things. People always thought that when Canterbury were at the Olympic Stadium and we moved out there, we made it ours. And, and we had the record crowds of all history, the history of the game for semi-finals and the fixtures are still played out there against South. So we want to make these sellouts at that stadium with bringing in new fans, new young fans, new families and everything else into those stadiums. And at the same time, take care of our faithful at Leichhardt and at Campbelltown. And certainly at Campbelltown, Campbelltown's been a revelation for us this year. It's shown we take good matches there and our team's competitive. We can sell it out every time. Yeah. And that's been a revelation and we intend to capitalise on that with opening the offices out there, what we're doing with our community. Centre of Excellence, everything else. So, look, it's nothing but positive news going forward. The only negative part is that we've still got 4 wins and, we need to get more. But Rome wasn't built in a day, and I'm not saying people write to me and say, I'm sick of hearing about, well, you might get sick of hearing of it, but I'm going to keep saying it because we've got a journey, we've got a pathway, we know where we're going, we know what we're doing, and if you want to be on it, we'll be there. I still remember clearly at Penrith when we were at Penrith, and we lost our 4. We got West Tigers smashed us at home, and we lost first 4 fixtures after they won the wooden spoon the year before. And we insisted after the game that we have back at the Leagues Club that people came back and the players had to come back because the players never used to come back because they used to get booed all the time. And so they used to go to the trotting track for a beer after the game instead of going back to their own club. So I insisted the players come back to the club. And we went back it was downstairs. And the first week we were there, we had probably 1,000 people there. Next week we had 300. This night we had 12 people. So I looked at the 12 people and, and the players were there, and their hearts were broken, my hearts were broken. And I went around and took every one of those 12 people's names. I can still tell you to this day who they were. And I said, when we win the premiership, I'm going to bring you up on stage.
U12.
We won the premiership. There was thousands of people, the hangers-on, the Harry hangers-on. I pulled every one of those 12 people up on stage. And all I say to our members out there is, you're the 12. You're the 12. Just stick with it. We'll get there.
Nice. I like it. Stay the course. I think that's the message. So a lot is going on. Richo, thanks very much for jumping on Behind the Roar.
Yep.
A lot's going on behind the scenes, as you can can tell. So it's not just, I guess, the ladder position now, but the plans going forward. Get to Leichhardt Oval if you can on Thursday night. Look forward to seeing you out there. Let's hope we can be really competitive and give it to the Cowboys Thursday night. Our NRLW, they're against the Titans on Saturday at Seabus Super Stadium. That's a lunchtime kickoff. Flegg, New South Wales Cup, they are at Lidcombe Oval, a doubleheader there. And then the Harvey Norman women's team, they are here at Concord on Sunday. So hopefully, if you've got time, support as many teams as you can. Again, Richo, thanks very much for jumping on. We'll do it all again next week right here on Behind the Roar. Until then, show your stripes.
Behind the Roar, the official podcast of West Tigers.